So good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome uh, or introduce dynamic entrepreneur and attorney Janelle Ryan Colbert. So welcome, Janelle.
Thank you so much, Karen, for having me.
So Janelle, firstly, congratulations on all your achievements. Can you please share with our audience how your entrepreneurial journey started and as an attorney?
So I started practicing in 2003. So I guess this year that makes about, 17 years of practicing law. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, my practice started where I launched my own business back in 2008. And part of the thought was I always had a desire to be an entrepreneur, and I was raised by a parent. My mother was an entrepreneur, and I wanted to think about how to create a business that serves clients, but really on my terms.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we work with bigger law firms, the clients come in and the attorneys serve whatever the specific area of law is or whatever the client is. You're basically at the service of the firm.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's a little bit different when you're running your own practice, you sort of develop things that you may be passionate about or interested in, and you're able to design a service that is geared towards that.
Yes, of course. Well, that's amazing. So your legal practice focuses on divorce, child custody, and domestic violence, which is an incredibly challenging speciality. How did your passion for serving as a lawyer in this sector of law start, or was it something you always wanted to do?
So I would say the family law practice is one part of my practice area. There are other practice areas that we do at the firm.
Yes.
It does form a basis of what a lot of the clientele was especially when we first launched. Family law wasn't intentional, right? It wasn't an intentional practice. Early on, I ended up representing, and here's the thing, when you start out as an entrepreneur, usually at the onset, you don't have the luxury of picking and choosing every type of client. You're really trying to grow the business, and sometimes at the beginning, the ocean is a little bit wider of what perspective clients you take. And I ended up taking a family law case representing a father early in my career. I would say within maybe 4 years of solo practice, I ended up taking a father and representing his case in court. And it was an eye-opening experience. Okay. He was an African-American father. He was trying to navigate through the court system. He was experiencing roadblocks on every side. He really felt defeated. And in my conversation with him and during the consultation, I really felt the heart of a parent. I wasn't a parent at that time, but I know what it was like for me having my father being able to impart in me as I was growing up. And it really pulled a heartstring with me. Yeah. So I ended up taking his case. And those facts in that particular case was so egregious. And they're not always like that, but in this particular case, they were so egregious that there was an intention on the part of one parent to alienate the other parent. And I could not really, my mind couldn't comprehend why. Yeah. So that was the case. I ended up prevailing in that case. He ended up with custody of his child. Yeah. And through representing him, he referred me to, every father. And that is really how that particular niche got developed in my practice.
Wow, amazing. So that leads me to the next question. We are living through a time in history that has altered and shifted the world on an epic scale. What would you say, or how has COVID-19 impacted your business, and what have you had to do to adapt, if anything?
Wow. So that's such a fluid question, right? Because we're in the middle of it. We're in the midst of it as we speak. One of the things that I am a big proponent, and I really believe this at the core, is that exceptional leaders, and I'm not, this isn't a boost of myself, but leaders, period, to be able to lead effectively and to be able to be a strong entrepreneur, I think inherently you have to be able to adjust to changing circumstances, right? And if you have a one-size-fit-all mindset in running a business, I think that is going to be a disservice. This pandemic has hit us in ways that we could never really comprehend, right? And we really haven't seen the ripple effects of how this is going to impact us over the next months and even the coming years. We don't know the lasting impact of how this pandemic is going to really affect us. I don't think any business is going to be untouched by this. And that is from the billion-dollar corporations all the way down to, small businesses. We see everybody, even as we stand, being impacted in some way or another. For the big businesses, what we see, the ripple effect to them, what we are able to assess at this point is, the tens of thousands. I was looking at a news article this morning that Bloomberg and Macy's, laid off, all of these, thousands and hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide. And so this is uncharted territory for us all. And I think we really have to be thinking outside the box. We have to be creative. But I do really believe at the core of this that there will be victories that ultimately come out of this once we get through the difficult point and try to get healthy. I think this is going to change the way that we operate as business owners. And I really think it's just going to change the way that we interact as humanity.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And also, I think that a lot of, I was just saying this to somebody the other day, is I also think a lot of the, the businesses that have not been authentic and, I think it's going to cut out a lot of rubbish, so to speak, in terms of some of these businesses that just make money off people selling coaching programs, but, not really making an impact or changing people. So I think there's going to be a lot of those that are going to survive through the tough times and then going to wipe out others completely.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing that really stands out more than ever is, how this has really crystallized how we have erroneously marginalized people in our society, right?
Yes.
Because who is sustaining our existence right now are the frontline medical, the people that's on the front line from a medical perspective, but then also lower wage workers, the supermarket, those who work at supermarkets, who do delivery. We need them in order to survive right now. 100%. And so we had a concept of, this sort of hierarchy. What we should take away from this is that the importance of people should never be diminished or undervalued, because life in its unpredictable nature can change, right? In a twinkling of an eye, in a moment. And those who we did not think would be the ones that are actually leading the country really deserve the crown right now.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. What are some of your what have some of your biggest lessons and learnings been within your career?
So for me in the career of law,
yes,
I would say the best lesson is understanding that in order for justice to really be, I mean, law is about justice, right?
yes,
The goal is to provide equity, to allow people to be represented under the law equally. Nobody should be above it. Nobody, should be beneath it. We should have equal opportunity. And the biggest lesson that I learned as from a career standpoint is that there is no justice really at the core of it unless it's accessible to all, right?
100%.
If it's accessible to a small segment of a population or, certain segments, that's not really what justice is. And so one of the things that I would hope to leave a stamp on is trying to create a way where the voice of those who are voiceless are heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. One of your core focuses has been in the African American community for dad's rights, which is something that is very important. Can you share with us why this was something you specifically focus on and the significance of what impact this has had within your community? And do you have an example without breaking any client confidentiality?
So, this is a really important area. And as I think I stated earlier in the interview that, early on I had the unique experience that was sort of my baptismal by fire, if you will, of that particular case. But what that yielded was something that was very important. I did a lot of reflection. I did a lot of reflection after that case, and I realized that this issue of the African-American man and the African-American father and his role in the society goes back. It goes back. It is a social issue that goes way back, and it's really, we don't have enough time in this interview to really touch on some of the social constraints and some of the injustice that African-American men have experienced. But here's what I will tell you. I truly believe that this is an issue that there's a narrative that has been painted, and it's a false narrative. It's a false narrative that has been painted, and it's been replayed in society, right? And so if you tell a story enough times publicly, people start to believe it. Right, exactly.
True.
But the truth is this. Most of the fathers that come into my offices, and I'm telling you firsthand from 17 years of practicing law, are good fathers. And most of and I represent fathers of all races, Caucasian, Hispanic, I had Asian, you name it, I've represented them. A great deal is the African-American community. And the concept that most of them have, and a lot of times they're divorcing, or they may not have been married and have a child in common, is that because the relationship failed with their spouse, you're not divorcing the child, right?
No.
And there has to be an effective way to be able to maintain the stability of the child and the children, even when parties separate.
Yeah.
And so one of the passions is, for me, trying to provide services that really impact the children, right? Okay. Because the best interest of the child is what is the analysis in any custody case. And that's pretty much the standard in most states throughout the United States. They want the best interest of the child. But here's what the statistics show. The statistics are clear that children thrive, right? They do the best when they have the collective impact of both parents.
Yes.
And however that family unit is defined, they thrive by having both of those parents involved. And so what we try to do is, in addition to the legal services that I provide my clients with counseling services and other resources to be able to meet the need while they're transitioning in what a lot of times is the most difficult time that they've had, being able to navigate the waters in that area.
Amazing, amazing. So that brings me to the next question. Your compassion and empathy comes across very clearly. So how do you balance that with what is fair and what is just?
That's a great question. The empathy comes from recognizing that everybody has a story, right? Yes. My story won't be your story, and it won't be the next person.
No.
But part of empathizing is listening.
Yes.
Listening. Because I've had clients, I don't always have the stellar client, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I have clients that when I, go through the case, I can think of 100 things that they could have done better that we wouldn't end up here. Yes. But that's neither here nor there. My role is an advocate. And for me, part of being an effective advocate for my practice is really understanding the human element in this. It's not just next client, right?
No.
In firms, you can do that. And, I'm not judging the way other people practice.
Yeah, but that's not how you practice.
No, I think that it's not the way I practice. I think it's because it's not the way that I look at life.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think that when I'm able to provide a service or provide a resource that can serve, even when I have a client that, didn't make the best choices, I try to I'm very candid. My clients will tell you, and this isn't attorney-client information because they'll post a review on like Google or other public forums where they tell you I'm very candid, I'm very honest. And when I need to have a come to Jesus meeting with my client, so to speak, to give them solutions to correct bad behavior or, be more, impactful or change things that can benefit them and their families, I try to give it to them. And at the end of the day, I think 99.9% actually appreciate that. They appreciate it.
No, that's amazing. And it also just shows you care. It's not like they're just another number, being served by an attorney. So I think that that's very important. So what have some of your biggest career highlights been?
I've had quite a few. And one of the things is, the longer you practice, the more the biggest testimony for me, right? Because there's so many different components to the entrepreneurship, the leadership, and there's the personal persona and, the social imaging and all of that. And that certainly has its place.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I had a situation where a client that I had represented years ago who just, followed back and checked in with me.
Yeah.
And I think at the time that I represented that client, I want to say the child may have been 8 or 9 elementary school, and the client, and this was a father, and it was another hard fought battle, and I was able to get him 50-50 access, 50-50 custody with of his child. And when he came back and checked with me some years later, the child was getting ready to start college, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that was, that is a highlight. He reached out, he sent pictures of him scouting out different schools, for his child and the child, going to school. And I think that part of the passion in it is when I'm able to see the victory that comes. You may not see it at that time. You finish the case, you're like, oh goodness, this took a lot out of me.
Yes.
But when you see the fruits of your labor years later and you see these children that are doing well, that are thriving, and you feel that part of your advocacy for that parent played a part in that, I think that is the ultimate reward, right?
Amazing. Yeah, and it's very rewarding to see that even your accomplishments and what you've been able to do for your clients, for sure. So you were acknowledged and featured in an acclaimed or the prestigious Black Enterprise magazine. Do you feel the positive publicity helped you within your career to open other doors?
Sure. It was such an honor to be featured. I was so humble and so grateful that the message, right, the message of what the interview was about, again, it highlighted in large part some of that advocacy. And the advocacy is important because a lot of times, again, with the going back to sort of the false narrative, right? And this perception that is placed on groups of people that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Absolutely. And so having a voice to be able to say, you know what, that's not really what's going on. Now, mind you, there are bad apples to every group of people, and that's regardless of race or culture, right? There are outliers 100%. That there are people who, aren't the best. But what I have found in my 17 years of practice is that the bad apples, quote unquote, and I don't even like that term, but for the purposes of the example, I would say is that's the minority. It really is the minority. Yeah. Most of the family members, and particularly the fathers that I represent, want to be there. Yeah. They want to maintain that relationship, that impact, that love, that support as much as possible. They really want to be in there. And that is really the truth. And I think that is the story that needs to be told, because the default that it's going to be the mother isn't, you cannot say that the analysis is the best interest of the child and allow that to be the default. That's not the case. No. The statistics are really clear that the contribution of both, and there's an old saying in particularly the African American community is that, it takes the village. It takes a village, right? Yes. And so having that input of the families and Black Enterprise featuring and highlighting that is champion, not just the fathers, it's really champion the entire family. So it was an honor, and it has opened up doors, and I'm very grateful to be able to have shared.
Amazing. So you're really passionate about equal rights. So how do you deal with the challenge of domestic violence, and how do you deal with such sensitive cases? And have you ever had to handle a case where a person who has inflicted the violence on what is inflicted the violence, and what is your point of view on this? And have you ever turned a case down as a result of somebody else inflicting, being the actual abuser, so to speak?
So I would say yes to all of the questions.
Okay, sorry, I know there's multiple questions in there.
Yes, yes, I have represented. I've done a lot of domestic violence throughout the state of Maryland and also in Washington, D.C. Yes. And a lot of times I represent the fathers, and many times the facts are not as what has been presented. But have there been times where I have represented somebody that was guilty of at least part of the allegations? Yes. And that goes back to what I initially said, is that sometimes our client isn't the stellar client. But what can we do, right? Yes. one of the things that I do is I provide services. I am a big proponent, and I think I mentioned that earlier. In my network, I have counselors, I have therapists, I have domestic violence counselors that deal with issues of rage and abuse. Because one of the things that I realize, and like when we talk about everybody having a story, some people have had issues in their life that have affected how they deal. Okay, it has colored how they view life. They have had situations, even from childhood trauma that has impacted, a cycle. And I think that part of my social responsibility is to provide them services. There have been cases where it was just beyond what I was able to do, and I didn't take the case. So there have been cases where I just, because of the overall impact, I just did not feel equipped to be able to provide services. But in a lot of those cases, I have linked up, clients or, with referrals of people that can provide services both to victims and to abusers. And I think part of a comprehensive response is being able, because we can't leave people where they are, right? No. We can't just say, oh, you're a terrible person and just leave you where you are. I think everybody is worth redemption. I believe that everybody should have an opportunity, at least an opportunity to correct wrongs. And so I am a big proponent of providing services.
No, that's amazing. And also it's a different way of looking at it and giving, like you said, giving people a second chance. So, so this leads me to the two final questions. So what are your 3 key pieces of advice you would like to give to other entrepreneurs and those who are looking to pursue a career as an attorney? And what legacy would you like to leave?
So I guess for the entrepreneurs, I would say for any business, and I think this is true, whether it's goods or services, whatever the services you're providing, you have to be client-centered, right? Customer-centered. I do believe that most of my business at this point, and I'm advertising and I have sort of like the social media, but that's not the primary source of the clients that come. We do an intake form for every client because we always want to know, how did you hear about us? What made you choose us versus, all of the other firms that are out there? And a large part of our clients are referrals. And referrals from other clients that we have had and that we have served well. So I think number 1 would be always stay client-centered, right?
Yes.
For another thing with entrepreneurs, generally is stay innovative, right? Think outside the box. Again, this goes back to sort of one of your original questions about the impact of this, of the pandemic and how it has touched and affected, businesses. Yes. Second major component is have the ability to be agile and to be fluid based on the changing of trends, right? Or pandemics or emergencies. So I think being able to be fluid is always going to be a big success for any firm, because if you didn't have a plan B, a lot of people are struggling, right now. I got calls yesterday from potential new clients, and I'm thrilled that we're still able, in the midst of this, to get contacted by potential clients. Yes. So that would be, number 2. The third thing is, make an impact. Whatever you do it with heart, do it with passion, and do it understanding that there is a greater good for what we do, right? So my firm and my service isn't, about Janelle Colbert per se. I'm a part of that, but the services that we provide it's bigger than who we are, right? Yeah. And I think that is what is lasting, is when you can impact people, you can assist people, which we do during their most difficult, most vulnerable times. Yeah. Clients that contact law firms in large part are facing a huge controversy of some sort, whether it's business, whether it's family or divorce or domestic violence or criminal, or a dispute from a landlord and tenant or a business contract. A lot of times it comes with contention, right? Yeah. So being able to step into the shoes of understanding that I'm here to help, to provide a service that would hopefully remove some of the fear and the unknown and the apprehension and come to some level of a resolution.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's amazing. And what legacy would you like to leave?
The legacy that I would like to leave is, when I think about, legacy, generally speaking, it's not so much of what you just leave, to somebody. Yeah. It's what you leave in them, what you impart. So the legacy that I would like to leave, and it sounds very cliche, but I would like to leave knowing that I have impacted lives, right? Yeah. That there was something that I gave, that I was able to contribute, that helped somebody at a time that they really, really needed the help. Yeah. And so I would hope it would be one of service, one of passion and compassion.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Janelle, for joining us today and sharing your insights and your expertise. And hopefully we can have you back in the future, and let's see what happens once we've gone through this transition on a global level.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate the invitation. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I just want to encourage all of your viewers and listeners that although this is a trying time, it is a time of uncertainty, and it can be a time of fear, because sometimes the uncertainty perpetuates fear. We're going to get through this. We are going to be stronger for it. And I hope when we get to the other side that we are more intentional about, what we do, the legacies that we leave, and how we impact each other's lives. So we're going to get through this.
Absolutely. And if people want to get in contact with you, what would be the best contact points?
The website, because the website will have our LinkedIn, it will have our Colbert Law Firm Facebook, and so our website is www.colbertlawcenter.com, and that is COLBERT lawcenter.com.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Be safe.
You too.